Right. Okay. So thanks and good to see you. I would like to hear some of your perspectives as well. I think part of this is like so it should be a two-way traffic. I think they're very, very interesting questions. You hear my perspective, but it's also good that I hear your perspective, and then hopefully we can we can start something meaningful. All right. So let's go ahead. Um, um, if you're not here yesterday, it's okay because all these are divided into sort of like a distinct, sort of disjoint topics. All right, the first one, solving mathematical problems with large language models. All right, let me give the context. So large language models, what are they are? So they're a machine learning model that is designed for like a natural language processing. Usually, the way they use it is interact with it is that we put in some text prompt and then you generate some output. Okay, so in recent years, and I think it's kind of very recent actually, there's been a huge interest in using LLMs to solve mathematical problems. You put in like just a text statement of like a problem from high school and then you get output and hope that it solves the problem. Okay, so they try to solve problems on various levels. I think at the start with problems from like middle to high school, and this is actually quite they're doing quite successfully. And then they realize it's okay, doing quite well. Let's try even tougher problems, more difficult problems, undergraduate level problems to some success, and then even research level problems, and which is gets a bit some sort of roadblock. Okay, so what does a large language model look like? So how does one of these examples is ChatGPT. So you put a text prompt on the top right hand corner, like produce this lecture that I'm giving right now on LLMs, and this is the output that it gives. Okay, so we're not giving the same lecture anyway. Right. Okay. Yeah. So here's maybe I give the connection to law. How comfortable should we be when we're using LLMs to solve mathematical problems? And a specific question I want to ask is, do LLMs actually understand logic? Do they understand what they are doing when they solve the problem? If they give an answer to the problem, do they answer the question in exactly the way that humans understand? And we try to be a bit formal about that later. Why we're doing this is that like I'm sort of using mathematical problems as sort of a prototype for legal arguments. Okay, I'm a mathematician by training, and as I understand, I think law arguments are also very logical as well. Perhaps maybe not super precise, but the sort of the rigor is necessary, and so there's sort of a good bedrock for which we can a good sort of platform for which you can understand. Okay, so specifically like in the next few slides, I'm going to tell you sort of state-of-the-art performance of LLMs in solving mathematical problems. And so maybe the question that you might have in mind is like, what does it mean for like legal practice and ability? Can it sort of like use these to function as lawyers to give advice? It's kind of stuff. Right. Let me give some a positive example that I tried. And if you pull up a ChatGPT, this will also work. Okay. So this is a question. Prove that this particular number is irrational. Okay? If you don't remember what irrational numbers are, that doesn't really matter. The main thing here is that proof is actually correct. For those who remember, it's the square root 2. So I put the expression over there over here. Show that this number is irrational. That means that it cannot be expressed as a fraction where these two are integers. Okay, so this is what ChatGPT said. Okay, ChatGPT gave a much more verbose response, so I sort of summarized it, sort of squeezed it within the page here. But this is what it says. Okay, so assume for sake of contradiction that it is not true. Instead, assume it's irrational. So it can be written as P over Q as some integers, no common divisors. Then square it, and then subtract 2 from one side. You get to this expression. And then you notice that like this is supposed to be rational. This is irrational, which is a contradiction because everyone knows that, that this is irrational. And so this is the proof. Okay, so if you don't understand the proof, that's fine. What you need to know, what I will tell you here is that ChatGPT is correct. This is 100% correct. Model answer, it is actually correct. So I was kind of shocked when the first time we did this because the fact that square root 2 is irrational is something you find in all textbooks. Now, this is a variant of a problem. So somehow like ChatGPT didn't just like code an answer from textbook. It actually had to do some extra creative steps here to sort of do this, like figure out the in-between steps and actually solve this problem. And so I was kind of surprised that like it's actually doing quite a good job. on this problem. Here's another one. Now it's a negative example. Prove the six-color theorem. Okay, what is this theorem about? Okay, so in this picture over here is a sort of a map. Think of this as like a map of like different countries here that are all next to each other. The question is like, try to color each country with a certain color in such a way that neighboring countries, countries means you share a border. If you share a border, you should not have the same color. Okay, so the question is like, can you show that no matter how I draw a map, on some map, I can always color the entire world, all the countries in the world, with at most 6 colors, and so that the countries that share a border do not share the same color. Okay, so that's a question. Prove this. Actually, 6 colors is, if you know anything about this, 6 colors is very generous. You can actually do it 4 colors. This picture shows you can do it in 4 colors. And in general, you can always do it in 4 colors. It's a famous theorem, but very difficult to prove. Okay, so so to ask ChatGPT if you know how to prove this 6-color theorem. And this is the answer that was given by ChatGPT, which is partially correct and partially garbage. All right, so what does it say? Okay, so it starts off by saying this. Okay, the first part is the output from ChatGPT. Or the 6-color theorem states that any map can be colored using no more than 6 colors that such that 2 non-adjacent regions have the same color. My remark, this interpretation is perfect. It is correct. Okay, so it is good. Second one, the theorem is a generalized version of the famous 4-color theorem, which asserts that only 4 colors are needed. Okay, it is indeed true that the 4-color theorem, only 4 colors are needed. That much is true. But the fact that the assertion that it's a generalization is not true. It is the opposite way. Because if I can do it in 4 colors, I can do it 6 colors. It's sort of, I do not need 6 colors anymore. But 6 colors do not imply 4 colors. So I'm actually giving a much easier, okay, so this 4-color theorem, it's a much harder version. So somehow it doesn't understand that like the implication goes the other way around. This is tougher than that. And somehow it's saying that like, that someone it thinks that this is actually easier than 6 for some reason. Anyway, I started to read on what it actually said. It's a long output here. And it goes on to talk about some stuff over here. The 6-color theorem was proven in the 1970s by Arthur Benton and George Macaulay using computational approach and a bunch of other stuff over here. Okay, I'm not going to read this. Let me tell you some of the things that I noticed inside the output, which was quite fun to read. Okay, first of all, some things that were right and some that were wrong. The 4-color theorem was indeed proven in 1976. 4 colors, not 6. The 4-color theorem by Kenneth Apple and Wolfgang Haken. Okay, these numbers, Arthur Benton and George Macaulay, I have no idea who they are. I looked them online. I don't know who they are, right? I mean, there are actually people that exist with these things, but have no connection to this problem. Okay, the fact that you can use 5 colors, this was actually proven in the 1800s. Okay, 6 colors, a bit more theorem. It's more elementary. It's something that you would cover in a typical undergraduate mathematics course. Like with a couple of hours, we can build up enough of the background and you can actually prove it. It's not difficult. Okay. Yeah. So what I did notice was that the most of the text was actually a description of the 4-color theorem. Small mistakes, but otherwise somewhat accurate. So someone was actually sort of giving like actually the historical development or the description of the 4-color theorem. Yeah, but that's it. Anyway, what I'm going to tell you about is this. Okay, so it's what you see here, maybe perhaps is an example of what you call like LLM hallucination. It's sort of a very well-known problem about LLMs and in general like AI models, which is that they can make up a totally plausible sounding sentence that is in fact either nonsense or it's not or inaccurate. Okay, so AI models, LLMs are known to have these sort of problems over here. The fact that it sounds plausible is almost by design because LLMs are built to be extremely, very good, very coherent language models. So no matter what sentence output you get, they are going to be coherent. Now, what they don't no guarantees about is that whether it's correct or not. The correctness is something that we something else altogether. Right. Okay, so these are different. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the state of the art of these LLMs on solving mathematical problems. Okay, so this is a data set called the GSM-8K that was sort of curated, built not too long ago. So I think April 22. So that's when the set was created. This is sort of like a data set of high school mathematics problems. give an example of some of these problems over here. So like maybe the top one, Beth bakes 2,000 batches of cookies in a week. If these cookies are shared among 16 equally, how many cookies does each person consume? And so this is sort of the level of the difficulty of the problem. Very, very easy problem. It's, I think, just some division over here. So these are questions that everyone here would absolutely be able to do. And so it's not particularly difficult problems. Yeah, so a good middle school problem should be able to solve the entire data set. So that is sort of the difficulty of the problem. This is the performance of the data sets I think that we saw here. I think I plucked it out from online. This is the leaderboard of like, so sort of people that compete with different models and see how many you can solve on the testing data set. Right now, I think the top model is around 96.7%. So that's where today's models are. So rough, again, so the punchline here is that for high school problems, these large language models are pretty good, 97% accurate, roughly speaking. The next one will be a different set of data set here. So this is frontier math. This was actually a different data set that was created by mathematicians. They're sort of like very difficult problems that an expert mathematician would find struggle to solve. It says like if you're sort of an expert in the area, it'll take you a couple of hours to solve it. But it's sort of like somehow representative. It's a good set of problems because somehow you need to be creative. You need to have a deep understanding of an area to do. This example of a problem. You need substantial amount of mathematics to even understand what the statements even mean. I have no clue how these problems should be solved. It was reported that like leading AI models could solve 2% of these problems in the data set. So that's where they are. Personally, I think 2% is quite remarkable. They can do it because these problems are extremely difficult. I'm not even sure if I could get past 0. So all right. Okay, let's talk a bit about, sorry, yes. Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure. Okay, there are different AI models here. I am not entirely sure if it was this like this LLM that solved it, or is it LLM using some other thing, which is sort of like formal methods, which are going to go about doing this. All right, so yeah, there are a few more topics. So let's maybe hold a question. Ask me again if like in the context of what I'm going to talk about, and then we'll see if. You see, okay. Right, so right now, what are LLMs? So LLMs are these like models, language models that predict text given text prompts. So that's all it does. You give it text inputs, hit enter, and you ask for the next text over here. That's what it does. It's quite plain and simple. There's not very much more to it. This is not a new task, actually. They're trying to predict text. Computer scientists and linguists, computation linguists, I guess, have been very interested in this task for a long time, and they're sort of trying to build this sort of like a text prediction for a long time, like for decades. But the results, they were sort of not interesting enough that like it never caught on to the public sphere. Like you wouldn't care because they were not that exciting until ChatGPT came about. So some of the earliest models, what I call n-gram models. How do you do it? So let's start thinking about it. If you had to do this problem of predicting next text, how would you do it? And so this was the first most primitive ideas that came out many decades ago. They were sort of predicting based on the next word that follows sort of maybe a chunk of words said previously. For example, like if I read this phrase here, the streets of Kowloon meander like a what? So how this works is that like you pick like the last few words in. Let's say take n equals to 2. I'll look at the last two words like a, and then I'll try to predict the next word here based on the fact that these words are like a. So how do you do this? Okay, so you sort of go about your entire corpus of all kind of literature that you might have access to, and look at the number of instances the word like something appears in the literature, and then you count them, and maybe you pick the one that's most likely, or you pick the one in proportion to the number of occurrences, some probability. Okay, so like a diamond, like a river, like a maze. You see how many of these appears, and then you sort of go about doing this. And then you go about doing this, and then you see this like, oh, a lot of these like nursery rhymes, twinkle twinkle little star, and you see like this, like a diamond, appears very often. And so maybe because this appears very often, you're quite likely to pick like a meander like a diamond as the most likely word here over here. So that's how things work in the past. But if you notice, one of the problems here is that these sort of predicted phrases lack global context. Okay, so what on earth does like the streets of Kowloon have to do with the diamond? Okay, so yeah, they don't have global context, even though if I plug every block of like 3 words, they sound perfectly coherent. Okay, so every M word says coherent, but if you go over longer ranges, they sort of forget what this is going about. And sort of this is sort of a known problem. If you want to, you can do a fun exercise where you take up a phone. And I think most of us, if you type text, you get this like there's some completion. So you can try and see like you try to bring the next word. Just keep pressing the next word and see what you get, and see if you get something coherent. You can do something like this. Yeah, so here's like some fun nonsensical example that from a textbook here. You can read it if you want. Right, so what happened after that? So Ngram's model was later sort of superseded by recurrent neural networks. Not important. I want to tell you what this is. I guess, but these sort of overcame a couple of technical challenges. For one, like it's sort of recurrent means like sort of feedback towards itself. In some sense, you didn't have to worry what capital N was, because like if you in this model, you sort of have to sort of think about different models for n equals 1, 2, and 3, and so on. But here, sort of this recurrence sort of did away with that sort of technical complication. But still, there's sort of problems like as I go further and further back away, I sort of forget what I was. After a few words, I sort of forget what was going on, because that's sort of the way the model was sort of set up. And so people realize what's going on. That you have to sort of like build models that sort of allow them to have some of long-range dependencies. And sort of like computational scientists and linguists had experimented with different language models in which they can sort of incorporate these sort of long-range dependencies. I think the big breakthrough maybe I think for as far as the world is concerned is like this transformer architecture that came out in 2017. This paper is called "Attention is All You Need." And the details, so I want to talk about this, but the idea here is sort of like attention. Somehow like it's a mechanism for sort of building long-range dependencies. It somehow retains like a component, or it's a sort of a mechanism in which they can understand sort of the content that was going on even as you go further as you progress along the text. In essence, what this was doing was that you give these methods a way to sort of like build very long-range dependencies. And once they could get sort of long-range dependencies, there was actually a coherent context, and everything, the text now sounds a lot more like logical. And so that was a big breakthrough. And then after people got excited and then went to sort of push ahead and see how far you could get. All right, but okay, let me tell you a bit more as well. It's not quite enough though. Like just because I can produce coherent text here wasn't enough to solve mathematical problems. There was still a huge amount of engineering to do in order to get it to produce logical answers. I'm going to give an example on like mathematical problems, but sort of in your head, you can always convert everything from mathematics to legal arguments, and maybe these analogies are also true. Okay, here's an example. Here's what happened over here. How would you actually create or train a model? Okay, so the naive thing is like you start by giving some pairs of questions and answers. Roger has 5 tennis balls. He buys 2 more cans of tennis balls. Each can has 3 tennis balls. How many tennis balls does he have? You add these 2 numbers, 5 plus 2 times 6, that's 11. Okay, so the answer is 11. So you give them a prompt. The question and the answer, 11. So the data set, what it creates initially was like all these questions and the answer, the numeric answer. The answer is 11. And they had a huge database of this, and they trained a model to try to predict the correct answer. And then what it noticed was that like it gets the wrong answer. Okay, so it didn't work well initially. And so I think some of these people, like especially these people over here, they had some clever idea, which is that instead of training giving pairs of question and answer, why not give something a bit more here? Questions and a much longer answer that sort of gives the sort of the working. So I'm not sure if this is common in Hong Kong schools, but in Singapore schools, you absolutely have these steps over here. Yeah, so you have to sort of explain how you got to the answer. Started 5 balls, 2 cans of 3 tennis balls, and 5 plus 6 equals 11. The answer is 11. Okay, so this was the new prompt that you put inside the data set, and then now you do the training. Okay, what this has on the training is that like instead of actually hoping that the algorithm sort of magically learns to map from the question to the correct answer 11, now it's sort of funneling the algorithm to go from the question to a sequence of arguments that if you sort of do this in logical way, you will arrive at the correct answer. And sort of it was a very clever engineering trick, actually. Giving these prompts was easy. Everyone knows how to do this. But to the algorithm, to the machine learning algorithm, it was sort of like eliminating all possibilities. Because if you want to go from Q to A over here, mentally, you think that the computer has to sort of do some mental calculations over here. You have no control over what this is. By introducing these sort of prompts in between here, you're sort of prompting the algorithm to say, hey, think of these steps in between, and you sort of follow these steps logically, you end up with the correct answer. And so this was sort of funneling, pushing the algorithm to sort of guide it towards the correct answer. And it's just a very clever engineering trick. And so perhaps one of the useful things here is that like if you want to sort of produce the correct answer, this sort of what people call a prompt engineering. We build data sets where you give the correct prompts here that will guide the language models to pick up what you want. Not just giving the direct answer, but also giving the sequence of logical arguments that build towards the answer. So this was like a clever engineering trick here. All right. All right. Maybe I pause for a bit. Any questions? Yes. Good questions. I think if everyone is following the next few topics, next few slides will sort of get to those questions and we continue those conversations. Okay. So this is maybe the question you want to ask. Are LLMs conscious or consciously aware that it's solving mathematical problem? Then it's like, are they conscious and aware that it's crafting legal argument by the same token? So this is a question. Is it aware of what it's doing? All right. So I'm going to give a sort of teaser to sort of everyone, maybe think all this for a short odds. Okay, so I give you this random sum of random numbers, and what is the sum over here? Now, if I give it a calculator or a computer, do you trust the answer? You trust the answer, right? Why do you trust it? Do you trust it because you've seen this example before, or you've seen the data sets? Or do you trust it because we implemented the rules of addition, right? And yeah, but we design in a way. We implemented the rules of addition correctly, like it's through some logical gates, and then produce the correct answer. We understand how it works, and therefore it gives an answer. So we verified in some way that it was correct. So so I guess people will say B, the second one, right? But in a sense, like LLMs are a bit like A. You see enough examples, you hope that it's correct. Okay. And then to Benjamin's, or is it this? Or does it learn the addition learns the rules of addition through enough examples? I don't know. Until we can peel open the layers of the LLM and ask it like what's going on over here, it's hard to know. Okay, so anyway, let's talk about this part over here. Okay, this thing over here. Can we do this thing over here? All right, so this will sort of bring you towards something called formal methods. Formal methods are language. So it's actually more of a mathematics and computer science. It's a language or a way to sort of encode precise mathematical statements using abstract statements that can be understood by machines. Okay, bit of stuff over here. Computer code can put together these statements, and using axioms or logic, we can come up with precise statements that we come at the conclusions that we want. A lot of stuff over here, but I think this is the most important thing here, the takeaway here, which is that like formal methods or reasoning, it's a very precise way of performing reasoning, whereby we can be confident that the machines understand logic or logical statements and conclusions in exactly the same way that humans do. So if they make a certain conclusion, it is exactly as we humans would understand. Let me give an example. Okay, well, we're going to give an example in a short while. In sharp contrast to LLMs, okay, algorithms based on formal methods, they do not falter, they do not get it wrong. If you solve it correctly, it is absolutely correct. Okay. So I guess my question is, you can think about this if you want. You can chat over coffee. Can you sort of formalize? I'm not sure if it's possible. Like, can you formalize law in a way that someone shaking said not possible? You can't. You're like you can have kind of statements and ambiguous. You cannot allow exceptions as well. It's very can we sorry. Yeah. Axioms. Okay, let's give you a go. Okay, so in mathematics, you sort of have to. Okay, so you have to be very precise here. You have to tell us what are the basic premises on which we build up something interesting. Okay, so I'm not sure what the legal translation of this is here, but this is what mathematicians would say. There's something called axioms. Axioms are fundamental statements here that you take to be true without question. Don't ask me why they are, but just take it to be true. For example, between 2 points, I can draw a straight line. Take this to be true. Why is this true? Who cares? I don't care. What we care about is that we can do very interesting things. We can do very interesting geometry later on. Okay, that's the important thing. What we care about is that we can make meaningful statements. The second thing we have is how to make logical deductions. So for example, if I tell you that I'm allergic to shrimp, wonton contains shrimp, all of us will agree that I'm allergic to wonton. Okay, so this is so that we sort of agree on the rules of logic. Now, how this mathematics built in a way is that we combine some of these axioms and some of these axioms in an interesting way, and we make interesting conclusions that we call theorems. Just an example, just to sort of explain what's going on. This is an axiom, or think of it as a rule. If I have a line here and I intersect with these 2 points and they form the same angle, then we say these two lines are parallel. They never meet ever. Okay, so let's just take this to be, we don't ask you why this is true. Let's take this to be true. Okay, theorem. Can you use just that rule alone to show that the angles of any triangle add up to a straight line or 180 degrees? Okay. Maybe we can do this quickly. Can you do it? Yeah. How do you do it?
You just draw a line at the top.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Okay, good. Very good. Okay, you draw a line on the top. Yes. You draw a line that's parallel.
Apply the axiom twice, right?
Yeah, apply the axiom twice. Yeah, so you draw a line on the top. You apply axiom twice. So you bring this angle here, bring this angle here, and so you see that the axiom will tell you that these two angles are equal because it's parallel. And then you see that these three angles form the angles of a straight line, and that's how you prove this result over here. Right. So what is this? What do you just do actually though? So what you just did is that you agreed with the axiom that the picture had. You agree. We agree with this. We agreed with rules of addition. Now you have no choice but to agree that the angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. This is just the conclusion from what we just agreed. Okay, so the job that you have done here is called verification, or checking that intermediate steps are indeed correct. Okay, you check that every step was done correctly. You also check that you also prove the result, which is the angles at 180 degrees. Okay, so what you just did is called verification. Computers can also do this as well, and they can do it in the same way that we do. Okay, not at the bottom of the details are. They can do it. So somehow you can code up all these axioms in the computer language. You program logical deductions in language, and then they can also what happens is that the computer will be able to sort of check, make deductions or verifications in exactly the same way that we do. Okay, so computers can be verifiers. They can verify if a proof is correct or wrong. Oh, sorry. Let me say this again. Computers can have the ability to verify if a proof is correct. Okay, so what is the catch here? Well, the catch here is this. Okay, verification is easy. Okay, when I mean easy, I mean computationally easy. Okay, once Benjamin told you the proof, you could check for yourself that indeed the alleged theorem was true, because you just have to check that indeed it was indeed using this result twice. The hard part here, which is the creative step here, is coming out of the proof, which is you think about this thing. So what do you think of drawing the line in the first place? Okay, so this is sort of the difficult part over here. So okay, so computers can do this relatively easily. This part here is somewhat more creative, and I think these days have been using AI to sort of come up with clever ways of doing this proof. But we'll talk about that in a short while. Okay, state of the art. Okay, so this is not LLMs anymore. Okay, LLMs are used in some other way, but these are based on formal methods. So when you come up with a proof, the proof is absolutely correct. Okay, no questions about the correctness or incorrectness. It's correct. It's either correct or they can't solve it. So the only two outcomes: either they come as a proof or they were just not able to solve it. Here's a question from from a high school contest. So much harder than high school problems. It's high school mathematical contest over here. Show that this expression is a perfect square. If you want to, you can do it on your own. This is the answer that they gave over here, which is you can so it's some human readable language. No, but actually at the back of this was that this is not how this is not the you can't put in this prompt into a ChatGPT anymore. You have to code it up in a computer language that the computer understands, and you sort of have to sort of pass this statement into this computer language that the computer will then understand what it means, and then it has some strategy for coming up with a proof, and then eventually proposer says consider this as the solution, and then you verify that this is indeed the correct proof to this alleged result. Okay, so this is what happens, what the computer sees, how the computer interacts. Our job is to translate these words into this thing over here. Yeah, so this kind of shockingly good actually. I'm sort of have involvement with this, the International Mathematical Olympiad, which is a high school contest for mathematics students, exceptionally difficult questions. And so what I didn't know was that at this point, in last year's contest, at the same time, Google DeepMind was also doing the contest. And I thought, personally, I thought how good can an AI model be? To my shock and to my horror, they were exceedingly good actually. They solved 4 out of 6 problems. That's it. It's very difficult to solve any problem. They solved 4 out of 6 problems, including one problem that was only solved by 5 human students. Yeah, so they solved the most difficult problem. They cheated a little bit because they used a lot of time. They had massive GPUs, and they could run these GPUs over 3 days to solve the problem. So, but anyway, it's just remarkable that they even got the answers correct. Okay, so how does it work over here? So we talk about the proof assistant over here. The proof assistant, okay, the proof assistant is the verifier, the person who says if you give me a proof, I can check for myself that your proof is correct. Okay, so this is what you just did as well. This exercise, the verification step. Now the second step here is the coming up with the proof. What logical in between steps do you put in so that I can see for myself that this theorem, alleged theorem, is true or not? This is the creative part here, and this is where the bit of the AI development comes in. So the AI model sort of intermediate steps. You put in some a bunch of statements there that hopefully builds progress towards the problem. How does it know whether this is correct or wrong? Well, if you put a sequence of of building blocks, you can ask this proof assistant and say, hey, does this prove this statement that you want? This guy's gonna tell me yes or no. And so sort of getting some inputs here. If you get a positive input, it means you made it means you solve the problem. If you don't, you get the negative feedback. So these sort of ideas, this sort of ideas actually blends very well with something that's called reinforcement learning that you might have heard of. Anyway, this was something that Google DeepMind had already done with AlphaZero for playing games, a game of Weiqi or Go. And so they sort of using that as a backbone, they were able to sort of build sort of algorithms for also coming up with proofs in the same way. Every time I get a reward for solving the problem correctly, and then sort of build on from there. They also have a lot of examples, a ridiculous amount of examples. And that was also very important for getting things to work. Could you solve unsolved problems? Not yet. Possibly, but we're not there yet, so that's hard. What is the difficult part over here? Okay, the difficult part is actually trying to convert human language to statements. Okay, so the reason why this is not so widespread here is that this is what we understand. We understand this. We don't understand this. Okay, I mean, it will take a while. So somehow at the back end, you need a human to apply these forward methods. Somebody has to take these things here and rewrite into computer language exactly and correctly. the computer can take on from here and do things problems correctly, but provided that your input was correct. So underneath here is that the assumption here is that like, in order to use these formal methods here, there's sort of like a we presuppose that there was someone who was able to precisely and correctly formulate all these questions that you care about into a human machine language, then hand it off to the machine, let the machine work on it, solve it, come with a machine output, then later pass into human understandable language. Okay, so there's sort of this translation process here that is that we still can't do very well. It's very tedious and yeah. Yeah, so I had a question over here. This is maybe someone else might think about. So another one, which is creativity. Like, what is creativity? Are AI truly creative? Like, for example, is it sufficient to call a piece of work or art creative just because it doesn't look like anything else we've seen before? At the backbone of these sort of generative models here is that you're building a network that's sort of like technical, what is a map, the distribution to the data points that we've seen so far. So the idea is that somehow when you sort of sample from this easy to sample from distribution, you generate one of these examples over here. I don't know actually, like what is a good way to like how do I say ascribe attributes like how this piece of whatever art or creation is somehow built upon like things that have been done in the past. This is another can of worms here that I'm not prepared to talk about, but I think it's an important question as well. What computer scientists can do is that they have sort of they built this monster over here. They have some idea of how the data that's being collected might have resulted or generated or led to the creation of this new thing that you have over here. So that you can say something, not a lot, but you can say something. But how do you call a piece of creation truly new? I do not know. So, next one, the last few chapters about no LLMs is more like interpretability and understanding what's going on. Okay, self-driving cars. And March 2018, Elaine Herzberg was pushed a bike across a 4-lane road in Tempe, Arizona. She was struck by an Uber test vehicle. This vehicle was in a self-driving mode with one human backup driver in the driving seat there. The person was supposed to be like, I guess, supposed to look out for these sort of things and act as someone who's going to intervene if needed. Elaine was taken to hospital, but she died of injuries. Okay, and then because of the accident, you might have probably heard of it, it caused a number of companies to sort of pause testing for a while. Anyway, at the end of this, like Arizona prosecutors were not criminally responsible. I'm not sure what that means. The backup driver was charged with negligent homicide and pleaded guilty, but no time spent in jail. Okay. This is one of these cars look like. This I think is representative of the car that was like sort of involved in the accident actually. Right. Okay. So what's happening over there? Okay. So the car itself was operating in self-driving mode when the accident occurred. So they sort of had the telemetry results here, so they could sort of go back and see what happened over there. 6 big seconds before the car crash, the car was moving at a certain speed, quite fast, 70 kilometers per hour. I think 6 seconds was the first time I think the self-driving system detect Elaine before the crash, but it detected her on the road, but didn't know what she was. First, it was classified as an unknown object. Okay. At the point of time, I think she was pushing a bike. It was said that the bike was between, the car was coming towards her. She was pushing the bike, so the bike was in front of her. So I mean, there was a camera there that would see both the bike and her as well. She was behind the bike. She classified as an unknown object, and then later the car came closer. It was classified as a vehicle, and then finally she was classified as a bicycle. Maybe the thing actually recognized the bicycle, which was standing was sort of between her. Why this matter is that because the system has some different behavior and response to each of these scenarios. Like if you think that you are a vehicle, the expectations are like you're not surprised because you expect a car to be at all these junctions, and you expect cars that will stop because you sort of like the other car that's coming on has a right of way. So and because of that, you probably wouldn't maybe slow down very much, and so there are different response. Anyway, 1.3 seconds before the crash, the system decided that emergency braking was needed anyway. The thing is that the system can't brake on its own. And the reason why that Uber decided that if they did this, they don't want to have erratic behavior where like all of a sudden like sort of like the car stops on its own erratically without any not sure why it stopped. And so it was decided that the operator should be the one doing it. But yeah, it was not designed to let the driver do so. It's a very tragic accident. I guess what see here is at no point, like it seems like towards like at no point the system actually realized that there was a human there. It's sort of like they didn't even know who actually was there. Right. Here's another example about like why should maybe like be very cautious about the conclusions of a AI model. Here's a neural network that on I think one of these. Okay, this is a bit old. 2014 Google LearnNet. It was like at one time one of the state-of-the-art solvers for doing image classification over here. On the left, it's classifies a panda with 57.7% confidence, and it sounds correct. This was one of the data points inside the one of the images inside the the data set. So that was good. What they did was that they could come up with this noise over here, and this is kind of something like that was chosen quite deliberately. Okay, so this looks here something imperceptible. Think of this as adding sort of pixel values. They add a very small amount of this noise here, something to be very small, and they end up this image on the right. This amount of noise was added it was chosen a certain way to get this result over here. To us humans, we can't tell the difference. On the other hand, what happened was that the same training, what do you call that? The neural network that was trained to do image classification would report this as a gibbon with 99.3% confidence. Okay, so what's happening here was that like the idea here was that like these authors were trying to demonstrate was that like these neural networks here I guess at some level, you want to show that like a neural networks, you're not entirely sure, confident of what they actually classifying or doing. And the way they're going to show it is that like this example over here was that you could get disastrous results, super confident of a totally incorrect. And sort of they want to demonstrate that the neural networks have this sort of they can be capable of this catastrophic behavior. Okay, and these are what are called adversarial attacks. And like they created this thing over here was created in a very specific manner, in a way that would fool the neural network. Okay, so it was created in a way that like that would fool the neural network. What I mean by this was this like it was chosen in a way that like you sort of I'll do this in an example a little bit later on, but in this paper here I saw this like very amusing text over here in a paper by them. What are the classifiers based on? Are not learning true underlying concepts that determine the correct output. Instead, they're sort of like build a Potemkin village that works well on naturally occurring data, but exposed as a fake when one visits point in space that do not have high probability in data distribution. So in other words, it's sort of extrapolation thing that Benjamin is talking about. If you've seen something not seen before that looks a bit different from data set, then perhaps you could perform disastrously. Yeah. Okay, so how do you do this? Actually, let me tell you a bit of how this was done. Actually, this is a very, very clever idea on how you create like an attack where like if I know what a neural network is, I can build an example that your human eyes, you can't tell the difference, but the neural network is going to fail disastrously. Okay, so this is what they call the fast gradient sign method here. There's a formula here, which you don't have to pay too much attention to, except that you want, what do I say here? So there's some mathematics that go on behind this. The idea here is that they pick this this thing that they add over here. What is the idea here? Okay, the loss function is the objective. In training, you want to minimize the loss. You make sure that your images, your classification is as close to the true label as much as possible. So you want to minimize loss. What they're doing here is doing the exact opposite. You want to maximize loss. They want to given an image, find another image here in the opposite way that will maximize the error. Okay, maximize the error because you got the panda correct. Let's try to maximize the error so that you get the panda wrong. That's the idea. Just go in the opposite direction. Not only that, it was picked in a direction in a certain way that with this sign function over here, it was picked in a certain way where the in each pixel we add not very much, add very little amounts, but collectively when you add the combined effect over here, this point over here is that each pixel, very small difference, but all of them are pointing in the same direction that when it adds up to the loss, they're all pointing in the same direction and it ends up affecting this here. So this was actually picking such that everyone is small amounts, but in precisely the correct direction that would fool the loss function over here. So it was a very clever attack of building something that would fool the neural network over here. This is one caveat here is that in this case over here, the new image was chosen using knowledge of the underlying parameters over here. So somehow you have to peel open the layers of figure out what the parameters are, and then compute using this thing and come up with this image over here. Okay, so since then people got really excited. They started building, okay, let's try to build other variants of methods for attacking a neural network that doesn't require you to know the underlying parameters. Okay, so these are called backward attacks. So people thought about doing this as well. And then at the same time, people will say okay, let's try to build neural networks that are robust to this kind of attacks as well. Yeah, but if you really have a good method that works well, you shouldn't have to worry that if you truly know what this is, you wouldn't be calling this a gibbon, will you? I'm not sure. All right. Yeah, so how can we get a machine learning model to explain its reasoning as to how it arrives at its Yeah, this is difficult. I have no idea how to do this. So I'm going to sort of give you let's say end of this workshop with a couple examples here of how people do this, right? I'm going to skip all this bit here. This is a linear regression, the things that you would know. So trying to find getting a machine learning model to explain its reasoning, it's difficult stuff. For simple models, this is a reasonable thing to do. Okay, very, very simple models. For example, if you have a linear model, you can absolutely do this. Here's a linear model. I want to, let's say, I fit a line. Once I fit a line, I look at the coefficients, and the magnitude of the coefficients will tell me something about how important they are. So here's an example here from this paper by 96 on linear regression with an L1 penalty term here. This is used an example for predicting the onset of prostate cancer based on a number of important health markers over here. The intercept is not important, then the weight, age, and then I think some of these are risk scores that are associated with prostate cancer as well. Okay, so they did regression, and sort of the idea is that if the coefficients have large magnitude, then they're sort of important over here. Yeah, so in this case over here, I think this sort of those are non-zero here have what I think are sort of relevant to predicting the onset of prostate cancer. Yeah, so in linear regression, this is something that you can reasonably do. But as you get more and more complex methods, this gets a lot more difficult. All right, so we'll not skip this. For kernel methods, you can also do something similar. Kernel methods are like linear regression, but instead of fitting with straight lines, you fit more curves over here. How do you understand what a kernel method or how does it make prediction? Actually, there is maybe a way, the simple way to do it. So the way that, okay, so in kernel regression, if you actually sort of went ahead with the whole crank and sort of did, yeah, it's all the steps here, then you will come up with a predictor that looks like this form over here. That's maybe not so important what the formula is, but here's the interpretation or how you sort of interpret why did the kernel prediction make this prediction, which is that it performs regression by taking a linear combination of values of data points. So it sort of sees the data points that are already available, see what the values are, and you combine them. Okay, so you combine them in some meaningful manner. How do you determine which one point is closer to another or not? And so this is where the kernel function comes in. Sort of determines which points are near and are relevant to you for predicting the new data point over here. Yeah. So in this case over here, one point is, I guess, even in kernel regression, you might be able to say, like, give some interpretation as to what your answers are, and the answers by talking about is that it's based on the data points as well. Skip some of this thing over here. Okay, neural networks. This is where people sort of, like, a lot of computer scientists say, like, man, I can't do anything about this, I can't interpret it. Let me try to maybe start by say a few things about neural networks and yeah. Okay, the first one to say neural networks, what they are. When I started learning about neural networks, I was someone who was personally, like, very frightened. I think they freaked me out. Like, they look something extremely complicated, and maybe that's the feeling that you have today. I'm going to perhaps maybe describe a neural network with three properties here that perhaps are more relevant, the most salient point about this. Okay, a neural network is a statistical model that, number one, has the ability to describe very complex situations. So they can encode very complex things, number one. Number two is that it's very easy to evaluate. Okay, so if I put in an image onto a neural network, the neural network can compute the answer, the output very quickly. Okay, this is like because of the way that the function is designed, evaluating the output and output is very, very fast. It was sort of fast by design. Number three is that, like, you actually have a reasonable method to fit or do training. Okay, the technical words that you want to do is it's called, like, for number two, evaluation is called feed forward, and the number three, it's called back propagation. It's called a training process. You've heard of these things here. These two are English translations of the words feed forward and back propagation. It just means that it's easy to go in one direction, and it's also easy to train via, it's called back propagation. Okay, so this is not so important. Yeah. So sometimes I wonder, like, I guess, like, these are sort of the essential bits of what neural network has, and yeah. So a neural network is sort of chosen in a convenient way, precisely because it has the ability to do all these things. It can describe complex things, and it's easy to evaluate, and you can train it reasonably easily. If you have an alternative model that has these three properties, then potentially I think you can do something interesting as well, although it's quite hard to think of such a useful model. Yeah, let's go skip this. Okay, convolutional neural networks. So I'm just going to say a few things about this. These are used on images. Okay, so if you sort of just take a neural network alone, it will not be very useful for images. Images are very high dimensional. So how the way that images work here is that, like, there's something called filters. Okay, so this is the sort of the intuition. If I have a picture over here, I take a small segment, right? This looks like a picture, looks like a natural image. If I take another part of the picture, it looks the same. Looks like something that's interpretable as well. So the idea here is that there's some sort of, like, a spatial invariance here, in that if I have a neural network that works on one part of an image, it should should also work quite well on other parts of the image as well. And so the idea here is that, like, convolutional neural networks encode this kind of invariance, and somehow, like, if I work well in one area, I should work equally well in other areas. And using that, they are able to reduce the number of parameters and build interesting things. Okay, let's talk maybe the state of the art, or, like, where we are with, like, interpreting neural networks. Okay, interpreting neural networks is very difficult. I can explain why a neural network classifies an image in a certain way. Okay, this is very difficult to make progress on. So let's do something a bit easier. Okay, so we can't do this. I can't tell you why it classifies things in a certain way, but we can do something else, which is this. Okay, neural network is very complex. Let's take a part of a component over here, inside there, we put it on images, and then we see which of these images sort of generate or the largest response. Sort of like a response being like there's some value that's large. And so the idea here is that doing things in an indirect way, where instead of trying to understand what was going on, trying to understand like understand why things are being classified in a certain way, they go about and say, let's look at the examples that we have. Which of these, what is the subset of examples that I have that invoke a particular response in a certain way? Among these subsets of examples, is there a pattern that I can then observe? And perhaps that would give some indirect, I can indirectly understand like what this component is actually doing. Maybe it's looking out for this sort of components. So doing it in an indirect way. I look at the examples and then see like, perhaps I can sort of glean and see like there's some recurring patterns over here. And so that's what they did. These authors, they did some, they sort of pick up a component and they saw like that in particular segments, all these parts of the images that had big response. So each of these rows here represent like one component. And I guess you can see in this bottom row here, it's all shiny dots here. So I guess you can infer that somehow this particular component of a neural network was somehow responsible for, I guess, like spotting these sort of shiny spots over here. And so it was an indirect way, but it's something we can interpret and see that like perhaps the neural network or this component is actually doing something that we think looks like spots or words or something like that. Okay, so a bit indirect. Slightly different method here. One of them I mentioned was by running through images and see which of these images led to big response. A different method was actually to sort of, instead of running images, they sort of like reverse the steps of the neural network. And then by reversing the neural network in an appropriate way, they could sort of see what patterns were being picked up or identified. So this is another idea. Here's another one here, which is sort of using like a spatial geometric ideas over here. So these are actually handwritten digits. Handwritten digits like numbers that you write. They're represented as a picture in like a black and white image of like say 28 by 20 pixels. So they live in very high dimensional space. And the idea is that like you take all these images and then you bring down into some low dimensional space here, maybe 2 by 2, and then see what kind of space they occupy. And then perhaps through that process, be able to reason like where these digits are occupying in this high dimensional space. So sort of the idea over here. And so they see all these communities over here. They sort of 10 different communities corresponding to 10 different numbers over here. Not everything is perfect. There's some that are occupying the other space as well. All right. Okay. This is the end of the talk over here. We'll conclude some remarks over here, and I'll really open up the floor. The use of AI in many areas, including legal practice, is very exciting, and I hear like some of the interesting views over here, or maybe open a can of worms. One of these things, especially what I talked about yesterday, was like what kind of implicit assumptions are we making when we implement these methods here? How do we be careful about this? Are we claiming to do more than we're permitted to? I tried to raise some questions about fairness, how it's been tackled or not being tackled, reliability, interpretability, and to the extent that we were able to do some of these things over here. I guess the more important one is perhaps starting conversations over here, which is that like all of you have concerns here that you have in your head, that you are experts in all domains. Start a conversation with maybe like perhaps me or Benjamin here. How do you translate your questions that you care about into like practical algorithm technique in the event that you want to use AI? So how do you translate like what your concerns are into something that it's into algorithms that would actually faithfully capture the concern that you sort of care about? And yeah, I think I'll stop here. Okay, thank you.